Yeah, audible, Sunil?
Yes, you're audible.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the second session of Conference 0.7 on emerging financial compliances for startups. Now, I would like to welcome everyone to the conference and start the second session of the conference. Just a minute. So, yeah, have all the speakers joined us? Yeah. Fine, we'll start in 5 minutes from now at exactly 7. Yeah. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the second session of Conference 0.7. I and Riddhi are back again to present another row of the best speakers of Asia Pacific for a discussion on emerging financial compliances for startups. So, firstly, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Shizioke Nanana Abeku, who is a lawyer, certified mediator, counselor, and author. He is also a fellow of Chartered Institute of Auctioneers. He is a member of the Nigerian Bar Association and an alumnus of St. Gregory's College and Abia State University from Nigeria. He is a firm believer in God, without whom he is nothing. He has written and published books on mediation and property management, handbook on the contemporary facets of mediation, understanding the basic principles of management of property. His hobbies are playing football, listening to good gospel music, watching football, and playing table tennis. He is presently working on a project on peer mediation, which he seeks to introduce to his country and other African nations. Next, we have CA Gyan Chandra Mishra, who is the former chairman of CIRC of ICI 2019 to 20. Being a CA by profession, he is an expert at assurance and stock markets. Currently elected as a Central Council member of ICI, Mr. Mishra has also been former chairman of Ghaziabad chapter of ICI from 2014 to 15. He is an ardent believer in the thought, vision without action is a daydream, action without vision is a nightmare. Next, we have CA Sharat Paliwal, who is the former chairman of the Agra branch of ICI. Being a CA by profession, he is also qualified for post-qualification courses of the ICI in concurrent audit, indirect taxes, GST, and arbitration and conciliation. Currently elected as the president of Janhit Shikshan Seva Sansthan Trust, and also serving as a director of VL Business Solutions Private Limited, VL Shiksha Sansthan Private Limited, and also part of managing committee member of Pali Degree College under Dr. B. Rao Ambedkar University, Agra. He is also a partner with Manoj Prakash Associates Chartered Accountant, having branches at Delhi, Agra, Manipur, and Italy. Next, we have CA Yogesh Chandra Pokhrana, who is the Joint Secretary of Udaipur District Badminton Association and the former Chairman and Secretary of Udaipur branch of CIRC of ICI. Mr. Pokhrana has also worked as the former President of Udaipur Tax Bar Association. He is a practicing CA since 1984 with CIRC of ICI and a political volunteer of Bharatiya Janata Party. CS Anuj Saraswat, our next speaker, is a fellow member of ICSI with an LLB and a Master's in Business Policy and Corporate Governance and a GST practitioner too. He has also been working in the field of corporate compliance, due diligence, secretarial matters since around a decade and runs his own practicing firm, Anuj Saraswat and Associates in the city of Georgia. He has served as chairman of ICSI Hooghly chapter 2021, and it was under his tenure that Hooghly chapter got promoted to oral grade chapter, and attained highest CS registration targets in Pan India. Next, we have seen Nihalchan Jain, who is a member of ICI. He is also a Bachelor's of Commerce from the prestigious HR College, Mumbai. Nihalchan has more than 6 years of professional expertise working with a broad range of global public and private organizations, helping them deal with the significant GST risks and issues. His experience also includes business and operational risk advisory, GST audit, GST compliance, setting up of standard operating procedures, etc. Nihalchan has a special inclination towards GST, wherein he likes to write, read, research, and speak about GST and previous indirect taxes, generally, as well as on a case-to-case basis. He also visits institutes like ICI study circles, at Bhiwandi, Belgaum, Borivali Center, etc. to speak to members. Now, I would like to invite Advocate Riddhi Bhanushali, my co-host, to take over the conference. Am I audible, Riddhi?
Yes, Shravan, you're audible.
Yeah, you take over. Thank you.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Advocate Riddhi Bhanushali, and I'm back for presenting another amazing session to all of you. I request all the attendees to switch on their webcams for the conference. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Chijoke.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
An attorney of law from the Nigerian Bar Association, to commence his speech.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for having me. It's indeed an honor to be invited for this session. I think my background as a mediator, not particularly a lawyer, will help me to pass across this session to everyone. In other words, what am I trying to say? I'm going to try to reduce it to the simplest term so that even anybody on the streets can understand what we're talking about. I don't want to restrict it to only those of us here. I want even the man on the streets who has a dream of a startup, once he hears this video of mine, he'll be able to chart his or her course. So basically, we're talking about emerging financial compliance for startups. The word speaks for itself. Like lawyers say, res per loquitur. The term of the session already captures itself. Emerging financial compliance for startups. So the new trends emerging, something like that, coming up for startups, people who are starting up businesses. What are the things they should actually see as a guide? Now you have to take it from what is compliance in the first instance. What is the need for financial compliance? For a startup, this should be the priority for a startup. If someone getting involved in a startup, what is the need of financial compliance? Compliance is one of the best ways to manage risks that are inherent in a startup venture. You have to have it first. What is the need for financial compliance? And I've defined it as compliance is financial compliance is one of the best ways to manage most risks that are inherent in a startup venture. Now, if you do not manage these risks, if you do not pay attention or pay heed to financial compliance, you now have to enter what is the non-compliance to regulatory requirement results. Because if you do not have a structure where you have to say, what are the things I'm going to do to make sure that this startup is a sustaining legacy for me, or if it's a partnership for my partner. You have to be very careful. If you do not have this compliance, you now have to run the risk of being faced with fines, restriction on operations, and license revocation. If you do not comply, if you do not have a financial compliance set out, elucidate it carefully, you have these problems. You have a problem of fine, you have a problem of restriction on operations, and license revocation. To ensure a smooth operation for startups, the following must be very observed. You have to have a financial model for a startup. You have to have numerical expression of your startup goals. Most of us dream of what we want to do, but when you start up that business, if you do not, the things you have, the things you contemplate in your mind, the reality, when it dawns on you, you see you can't achieve most of those things. So you need to set out the numerical expression of your startup goals. You need to know how many customers you intend to have, how many people you will hire. You need to know your margins. Will it improve? At what stage will it decline? What will make it to decline? You need to take all these things into consideration. The creation of a financial model will bring to the fore assumptions you will test as you execute your business plan. Before you get into a business, if you're desirous of starting into a business, you will have dreams, what you've contemplated in your mind. But like I said earlier, these things, when they face the reality of the environment, the realities of the policies, financial government policies, you'll be surprised, you might be discouraged. And at times, most people lose that ambition of having a startup business that had intended originally to commence. So you have to have a financial model for a startup. In addition to what I've said, you have to know your expenses. You have to keep your business simple, because some people, they have dreams, and you have to pay attention to little by little you grow things. You don't just rush into it, because even if you have the wherewithal, you don't rush into a business. You need to create a stage. You need to say, in this quarter I have achieved this. In the next quarter I will achieve this. You need to set out these timelines. You need to review your assumptions. In reality, this is one of the key things I want anyone listening to us outside to take home. This should be the major take home. Review your assumptions in relation to reality. This is the key problem most startups have. Absence of relating your assumptions to reality. What you have in mind, if you do not play it part to part, or if you do not bring it into context with the realities of wherever you're situated in this world, whether India, Nigeria, the government policies, their business, other business interests, if you do not test your whatever assumption you have with the reality on ground, you're bound to fail. You need to know your income. You need to know how much you're to gain, how much you're to spend. You need to have all these things well encapsulated, so that you do not run the risk of being frustrated. Now, I'd like to talk about my experience as a mediator, starting up as a mediator. Most of us know that at times, mediation is not so, what word I use now, is not so attractive in terms of remuneration like what you get in litigation. But because you know that mediation for me, is a feature of the law. It's a feature of the law practice for those of us who are lawyers. Because eventually, with the uncertainties in the world is faced with a lot of uncertainties. Presently, because of COVID, there's the amount of income that is disposable by everyone. People are unsure of what tomorrow brings. So if you're meant to invest somewhere, you're more careful these days. You're more careful to restrict the way your funds inflow and outflow of funds from you, because of the realities or present realities on ground of what is happening present in the world. People are more careful, they're more circumspect in how they spend money. So mediation is very key for those of us. So for us now, as a mediator, I will now want to restrict it to a mediator, a young man who wants to start up a business of mediation. It's rather going to be very, very tasking. But if he does not have the mind to remain on it and know that it's not everything that turns out to profit. It's not all startups that you have the mind for profit. There are some startups that eventually dovetails to legacies. You might not be the billionaire tomorrow. This is for those who are starting up businesses on some other ventures. You might not be the millionaire as a mediator, getting eventually into the mediation business, for a startup mediator. But surely, God being on your side, you surely have legacies that will live long after you're long gone. That is for sure. So it's not, in other words, it's not all the startups that will eventually bring in funds or bring in profits for you. There are some that will not bring in much money to you, but they will keep you, they keep you rolling by, and surely they'll create legacies for you. So another thing about startups is you have to be committed. In any field, you have to be committed, and you have to use the platforms available today. The platform available today. However, you're going to get exposed to these platforms, all the social media platforms. Is it the Facebook? Is it the LinkedIn? Is it the Instagram? However, you're going to get on those platforms. You need to get on those platforms as a startup, as someone that is venturing into a startup. You need to put your business out there. You need to publicize your business. And these things at times do not allow costs. Do not allow costs to scare you. These things at times come to you at no cost. All you have to do is subscribe with your little data, and you're on these platforms, and you're taking your business beyond your shores. You're taking your business beyond your climb to other people knowing about you. If I wasn't outside my climb internationally, you would not have known about me to invite me for this program. So as a startup, if you're getting involved in anything, you need to create your branding has to be super. You need to have a very strong branding section. However, you're going to make sure that you're the faces of people as a start. That is very key. Branding and realizing. This is more like, for me, is a major takeaway for anybody who is listening. Just opposing your assumptions in relation to reality, because this is what most businesses have not seen the light of day. Because what you have in mind is not what you're going to face realistically. So you need to know how to juxtapose these two things and move on. So simply, I don't know how many minutes I have. Do I have more time? This is a brief of what I want to encourage startups in respect to this session.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Mr. Shizuke for the amazing speech, and I would like to invite Riddhi Bhanushali to take over.
Pardon? I didn't hear you, sorry.
It's lagging, sir.
It's all right. You have your speech.
Okay. I would like to thank Mr. Shizuke for his amazing speech, which enthralled the hearts of our audience. Now, I would like to invite CA Gyan Chandra Mishra, Central Council member of ICAI, to commence his speech.
Madam, actually, he is stuck up somewhere, so he is unable to join. He informed me.
Yeah, not a problem, not a problem. I'll take it forward, not a problem. Sir, you can start with your speech.
Myself, CA Sharad Paliwal. Should I start?
Yes, sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay. First of all, I convey my thanks to Vanilla Naiduji and Advocate Nivedita ji for inviting me and giving this opportunity to share my views on financial compliances for startup. Basically, if we think about a startup, first of all, we should think and we should keep in mind that in what status we are planning to incorporate the startup. Because for DPIIT, we talk about Indian startup, eligibility criteria is for private limited companies, registered partnership firms and LLPs. In case if turnover exceeds 100 crores in any financial year, then one startup cannot enjoy the benefits of a startup in India. Once we decide the status, in which status we will incorporate the startup, after that we should plan properly under the able guidance of any consultant about the compliances, what compliances we need to comply with. Because in case of non-compliance, the financial cost may cause a hurdle to the startup in beginning. Just in brief, if we talk about different financial compliances, by dividing and by categorizing these compliances in the way like taxation compliances and other laws compliances. Various compliances depends on the nature of business, what business one startup is planning to enter into. Like in India, if a startup is planning to enter into a food processing, then that startup will go for food safety licenses also. Many other licenses may vary from one state to other state also. Our government of India is of intention to promote private limited form for startup. And in case if we incorporate startup in the nature of private limited company, we should comply with Companies Act. In case of taxation compliances, taxation-based compliances, we may categorize into category direct tax compliances and indirect tax compliances. Direct tax compliances, as we already know, under Section 80IB, tax holiday given for 3 years, 100% rebate for 3 years out of 10 years block. So a startup should comply with various provisions of Income Tax Act to avail these benefits. In case of indirect taxation, GST, not only GST registration but also different returns which are to be filed by a startup, because once any startup company fail to comply, then entire focus will divert from business to penalty. Just like prevention is better than cure, like that compliance is better than penalty. So a startup should keep in mind that proper planning of business, as proper planning of business is necessary, like that proper planning and consultation for compliance is also necessary. After that, various labor laws like Employee Provident Fund, EPF, ESI should also be taken into consideration. Different contractual obligations, because one startup will enter into agreement with not only with employees but also with various vendors. So proper drafting and proper compliance of different contractual agreement is also beneficial for avoiding future harassment in the nature of various disputes. As a startup, one startup may attract FDI, may take the benefit of different foreign investors and foreign funding. Then in India, that startup should think about FEMA, because non-compliance of FEMA will attract various stringent penalties and repercussions. So I am thankful to SK&G Group team Hyderabad that this type of conference to aware different stakeholders and professionals also, because it may be a great opportunity for professionals also to make aware the new budding investors and startups to comply with various financial compliances. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank CA Sharad Paliwal for his informative and knowledgeable speech. Now, I would like to invite CA Yogesh Chandra Pokharna, former chairman of Udaipur branch of ICAI, to commence his speech.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yeah, I'm very much thankful to group to invite me. Though Mr. Sharad Paliwal describe all the requirement of startup legal compliances, I would like to now stress more on the some practical examples. Though we can sorry, due to overheating of phone. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, sir, you are audible.
Yeah. Due to overheating of phone, it is going to shut down. Though Mr. Sharad Paliwal inform all the requirements which in India startup may have to face. What now I am going to stress is the basic some live examples. I am starting with the one example. In 1985, one company came with the CD manufacturing in India. At that time, if you are aware, in Indian market, CD is coming around 300 rupees per CD, pre-recorded CDs. Now, when we went to IDBI and IFCI for financing, we told them that we will be able to sell these CDs in 15 rupees. At that time, in India, license permit system was prevailing, and we got the license to manufacture in this CD, manufacturing CD in India. That was the first license we got. That company got the license. But unfortunately, the promoter are not financially well controlled and well managed. Despite having this large margin, the business went bust. So the moral of the story is that though we may have good idea, but we should have good financial planning and good financial implementation and control with us. And the promoter failed to understand. Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yeah. The promoter failed to understand the simple basic bureaucracy norms. You have to have a system to please and satisfy the bureaucrats. What at the ridiculous thing they thought was each type of level of music CD which you are producing, that company was EOU, that it can sell only 25% of that particular CD in India instead of making it overall production link. So this is the one example of failure where financial control was weak, management is greedy. This is one example. I would like to speak on second example, where one family business in 1990, they were top in India, but greed of one family member, he looted entire business, and now they are all family members. If we combine their business worth, they are not among first 20 maybe around 100, at number 100 plus. Despite having good business opportunity, business venture experience, they lost the business. Now I'm coming to another business where one small fellow, a peon practically, he saw that people are chewing tobacco with the lime separately, and that was available in two pouch. One is lime and one is with tobacco. He came with the new idea and prepared a mixture, proper mixture, and started to selling this tobacco pouch at small 1 rupees and 50 paisa piece, where his cost was only 20 paisa. So he earned a lot of money. This is called innovation. So for legal compliances, you have to have a good consultant. I also have an experience of a company which were in toll road project. Consultant in 2001 gave advice that your entire income is tax free and you will be getting exemption of tax benefit, without telling him that his income will be taxed as met under Income Tax Act, and that fellow lost crores of rupees in paying taxes now. So though legal compliances, one must be very much aware and has to be carefully in following it up. Otherwise, your entire business may be going bust. So good evening and thanks for listening me. Thank you.
I would like to thank CA Yogesh Chandra Pokharna for his brilliant and intellectual speech, which gave us a new way of knowledge. Now, I would like to invite CS Anuj Saraswat, former chairman of Hooghly branch of ICSI, to commence his speech.
Am I audible?
Yeah, sir, you are audible.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's indeed my honor and privilege to share this platform in the presence of such knowledgeable speakers, not only from India but also from abroad.
Yeah, so, sir. Yeah, sir. We are also thankful to you for coming on our platform.
Right. The topic for the day is on the startup, and not just for the day, but it's a very innovative idea which has been taken by your team to talk about the startups and the financial and the other implications behind those startups. But before talking on the implications, I would like to highlight on a new concept. Like I heard our learned speakers speaking on the concept of the private limited company which is being formed to encourage startup. But recently, with a notification, by the notification dated 5th of Feb, I suppose, there has been a concept of startup LLP. So why just a company when you can also start your new business in the form of an LLP? Much details behind it will be given by a Ministry of Corporate Affairs in the time to come. So,
sir, can you explain the difference between private limited company and LLP?
Definitely. Like in the private limited company, we have the directors, but in the same way, when we talk about the limited liability companies, we have the partners. So, whereas in a private limited company, we used to introduce capital. We used to introduce not a equity capital, whereas in the LLP, the limited liability partnership form of a business, the partners will be bringing their contribution, and the liability will be limited. The liability of the partners will be limited, unlike a company. The only drawback between a company and an LLP is that in a company we can raise equity, whereas the only source of funding in a LLP form of a business is capital contributions or the loan taken from the partners. So that is the only way of funding. So this is the difference. But we will wait for some time for more clarification on this new concept of startup LLP. Once this startup LLP will come into existence, we have more of a clarity, and I believe that more of a form of business will be in the form of LLP. The reason being, when we are starting our LLP, we don't have much of compliance burden which we have when we are forming a private or a public limited company. As in, we do not need to require to appoint an auditor if our capital contributions is beyond 40 lakhs. So there are various other concepts. So a person enjoys much more independence when we talk about compliance burden in running a limited liability partnership than a private limited company. So that way, if we look upon this concept of LLP will be gaining much more importance in the times to come. But if you ask me, a private or a public limited company, if you are thinking about a long run, so if you take advisory services in that way, so the main reasons behind the failure of a startup is that they start from the scratch. They do a lot of research work, but they do not take advisory services once they are going to start their new venture. What advisory services is, whether they are having a proper team, whether they have made a good research work about the competitors, the pricing, the cost, and the demand of their product. There may be a good demand of the product in a particular region, but once your business starts scaling, obviously you need to scale out of your regional boundaries to an international boundaries. What if my product is not having any particular a good amount of demand, maybe in Nigeria, maybe in Bangladesh? So my product will be stuck just in this national areas boundaries of India. So I will land up, my startup will land up not on a scaling platform, but after a certain point of a time, there will be a saturation in the market, and if I have not taken the patents and if they are not proper trademarks, so there are chances of my competitors coming in the market and they starting their own business just as a true copy of what I was doing. So these are the reasons behind the failures of a startup, and that is the reasons why startups in India have been failing in the last decade or so. There have been, if we have seen in the last 4 or 5 years, pandemic has played an important role behind this failure of startup. But that doesn't restrict only to this particular country, India. That is prevalent all over the world. And before the pandemic, the amount of contribution, the amount of funding which we were doing into a business have gone down drastically. But with the change in the economic system, and now with the pandemic taking a back seat, the business are back to normal. And thanks to the situation that we are coming up with more and more of startups after this pandemic. The reason being, if lately you must have seen, there was a good television show which focused more on the concept of startup. So after that particular show, we have started seeing any youngsters coming up with this new concept of bringing their own ideas and doing their own business. I won't name any particular show, but you must have seen that television show wherein people used to come up with their ideas. They used to pitch their ideas and take equity investors into the business. So that was a good platform for the for the youngsters in the form of startup. If we talk about the relaxation provided by the government of India, most of the relaxations are being given for the first 3 years. They get more of a tax benefits. So if you have registered yourself as a startup, if you are doing your business as a startup, so for the first 3 years, you have to have tax benefits. When I was talking about LLP, so in the LLP concept, you don't need to appoint an auditor. So this is again one of a big relaxation. There will be less of compliance burden, like I said. There will be less of compliance cost. But the thing is, you need to focus more on your core areas, and this is the place where the startups fail. While complying with the core areas, they forget what is the need of the hour, and that is the reason more of our startups lose their importance after a span of 1 or 2 years. This is not what I am saying. This is what research have proved over the years. In India, this concept of startup, there have been not much of equity investors into your startup, and that is the reason, because of lack of fundings, the startups have gone down. But after this pandemic, if we talk about more of a late 2020 or to late 2021 or early 2021, we have seen after the pandemic, we have seen that the young entrepreneurs are registering themselves as a startup to start their business in a form of a private limited company, register their trademark, and then move ahead, and they are doing good. They are doing good because they have an innovative idea. Until and unless one has an innovative idea, the startups are not going to survive for a long period. And until and unless you provide this strategic management procedure into your business. Because what we do is we come up with a strategy and we keep on introducing it, and with no change and with resistance to change, we don't tend to move forward. So this is again one of the things. And if you are not having a good team, when I say team, the team should be the hungry people. So if I can be hungry for what I am doing, but my partner may not be hungry for that kind of work which I expect him to do. So that is the way I am thinking. That is the way I am thinking my product and my market. But somehow the other person has expertise. Maybe he doesn't have an expertise in marketing, or maybe I have a good expertise in marketing, whereas he doesn't. So we need to match our capabilities, the areas which we can focus upon. That is the only way we can move forward with our startup. So in a nutshell, if I say we need to have a good homework before we come up with a startup, before we float our business in a market, and to have that, we have to have a good consultant, as rightly said. Because until and unless you are doing your business without any proper guidance or a good consultation from a consultancy advisory firm, there are chances that with this regulatory compliances, day-to-day regulatory compliances, your business might land up more into trouble. I'd like to take a small example of Wow Momo. The concept was developed in the mind of two young students who were doing their college from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata. They thought of starting a business in the field of Momo, because in this part of India, in this eastern part of India, people are inclined towards eating momos, more of momos. It comes from Darjeeling. So the Darjeeling momos are famous, and here also they thought of doing something new. So when after their college, they used to eat momo from a roadside eatery. There used to be a lady who used to cook momo. So they developed an idea. They started doing research, R&D, and then they thought of taking it. They thought of floating a business, because it was in the year 1998. 2008. There was a global recession. So what they thought of, even if we are going to start up with a job, we won't be getting more than 25,000 of a job in Calcutta, saturated Calcutta market. So they thought of doing something. They thought of doing something big. What they did was they approached Spencer outlets. They approached Spencer outlets, and they took a small table area in a Spencer outlet. What they used to do was they used to approach the clientele of Spencer with their momos. They used to make them taste the momos and create that taste in the minds of the person who were visiting there. Very soon, from that small outlet, Wow Momo used to have their outlets in every nook and corners of Calcutta. Then, while scaling the business, see why I'm telling this story. From this story, there will be the answer to all the solutions for startup. When they saw their business growing, they took a partner. The partner was himself a chartered accountant. They took him as an equity partner. Partner bought in equity, shares were allotted to him, and they introduced him as a partner. And somehow, as a partner, he was also a good consultant. So he was taking care of all the regulatory compliance and everything. And they had him on their board. Very soon, not only Calcutta, Wow Momo started their outlets in Bangalore, in Delhi, in Mumbai, and then they moved abroad. Obviously, due to pandemic, they suffered a blow. But if we talk about pre-pandemic area, Wow Momo had become a brand not just in India but in abroad, and they started doing research work with their products, because they got this idea that only with this product called Momo, they won't be able to survive in the market if you are going to have dinner or maybe lunch. So Momo won't suffice. They won't fill your stomach. So they started with a platter. Wherein they filled Momo with some steamed rice, with some noodles and everything. So they introduced a platter. Very soon they came up with this chocolate Momo. So quite a different field. We had never heard this concept called chocolate Momo. Kaisa hoga, kaisa nahi hoga. So we were quite thinking, but they introduced a different kind of a Momo. Then they came up with a new product called Moburg, wherein you'll get a Momo and a burger together. So all these were innovations which were done by Wow Momo. And these innovations are quite required to scale your business in startup, because until and unless you're not going to do more of an innovation, Wow Momo would have gone down by just selling a single product called Momo. So they had to come up with time to time R&D and introduction of new products after doing a good market research. So this is how your business is also going to survive. So there's no other mantra, but these all small things. I don't think I have exceeded that time. There are many other speakers also waiting in queue. So Riddhi ma'am, if I can take 2-3 minutes more.
Yeah, sir, you can take 2-3 minutes.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Thank you. Right. So these are the things which has to be kept in mind. I believe most of our audience are students, right? If I'm not wrong, most of our audience are students, or are they?
Yeah, there are students as well as completed degree holders.
Okay. Perfect. Right. So the main thing which we have to keep in mind is a long term, what we are planning for. Like I told, whether you have to go for an LLP form of a business or a company form of a business, you have to keep your horizon for at least 3 to 5 years. If you want to introduce, if you want to go for a capital funding or you want to raise capital from the market, you have to go for a public limited company, wherein you can raise capital from the market. Whereas if you want to start from a small business, you can start with a private limited firm or a LLP. This I should make it very clear. Whatever kind of a business you are starting with, you always have an option to upgrade your business from LLP to partnership, or sorry, LLP to private company, or maybe a private company to a public company. But if you're thinking of a long run, maybe for 3 or 5 years down the lane, but every time you can't go on with this regulatory compliances, because it also changes the name of your firm or your company, your business. So keeping in mind your long-term horizon, you have to think it in the beginning and then start your business. This is going to hold your key. What are the source of finance available in the market? Whatever business you are going to start with, what kind of, obviously you can take loan from the financial institutions, but then are you having your property or any asset to mortgage, any security, any collateral security which they will be requiring? Are they having, or are you having sufficient capital, or are you going to sell your products in the market and gain money out of it and reinvest that profits into your business and wait for more 2 or 3 years and then scale your business? That is going to take a long time. If you are really thinking of doing that, you will be eroded from the market. So these are some of the things which an entrepreneur must keep in mind before he has to start his business. So startup, it sounds good, but it requires a lot of effort. And trust me, it requires more than effort. It requires your belief. Until and unless you are inclined to do your own startup, you can't do it. So that thing should come from within. I need to start it. No matter what, I would scale it. That's it. That's it from my part. Thank you, Riddhi and team.
Okay, thank you so much, CS Anuj Saraswat sir. You gave an amazing speech, and yes, there need to be a wow factor in everything. That's wow momo. So anything you open need to have a wow factor. If it is a chai, then it should be a wow chai. Okay, so now I will further invite CA Nihal Chand Jain for his amazing speech.
Hello everybody, am I audible?
Yes sir, you're audible.
Any disturbances in the background?
No.
Nothing as of now?
No, as of now, nothing.
Fine. I was hearing to a lot of, interacting and mind-blowing financial compliances.
Yes.
But the way I look at it is a bit different. And first of all, thank you everybody in the SPG group and to all the coordinators who thought I am capable enough to deliver a short speech of say 10 to 15 minutes. And
yeah, sir. Thank you so much for coming on this platform and making us. We have no words.
So the first thing that I always suggest to a startup is get your basics right. At a lot of time, what happens is we are very good technically, but we don't want to get our financial basics right. And a lot of newly bred startups, they feel that accounting is a cost. See, understand one thing and try to keep it in your mind and in your head. Accounting is not a cost. In the long run, the only thing that saves you is accounting. And when you talk about any financial compliances, the base of that has to be an account. Whenever I talk to founders, they are like, ठीक है ना, accounting देख लेंगे, कर लेंगे, last में एक बार we'll look at it at the end of the year, and that is how it will be closed. But what they don't understand is, at a lot of point, a lot of authorities have a lot of power that they can just walk in and they can inspect things. If you are not prepared, if you do not have that basic zeal to keep your accounts ready, it is always a thing as to what you are trying to do for a long-term future perspective. Secondly, when I talk about startups and its financial compliances, what I also understand is that the branding of your firm has to be a very strong one. Say, I have talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people only know me for GST. It is like if there is a GST, it is Nihal. Apart from it, we don't know whether do you do anything or you don't do anything. That is a review that I have received from the market. So your branding has to be there. And when it comes to innovations, first I always suggest make one product, make it a success, and then we can always capitalize on it. Otherwise, what will happen? You travel in too much boats at a single point of time and you reach nowhere. Coming back to our main topic of financial compliances. See, what I understand is I take up any element of my financial statements, be it profit and loss, be it P&L account, all of it will have a financial compliance. If I have look at, or if I start from my balance sheet, the first item that I see is capital. Capital will also have compliances, say based on whether it is a promoter driven company, whether it is a public driven company, whether there are foreign funds involved, there are no foreign funds involved. So everything that you can actually visualize is a financial compliance. And a lot of times what I also tend to see is people I try to understand the law that is their basic law. Say for example, if you are into importing of services and then finally adding up a markup and then trying to sell it out to your customers, the basic law that applies to you is goods and service tax plus every other act. What happens is people don't want to understand that GST element of it. People don't want to understand the income tax impacts of it. People don't want to get into the certifications aspects of it. And then when they are caught by the authority in any capacity, they come running to a consultant or a chartered accountant or an advocate or a company secretary or whatever, whosoever that they trust on. But remember, a stitch in time always saves you 9. So,
Sir, but as being an advocate, I have also found out that there are long procedures for certification and everything. So, उससे बचने के लिए maybe to get rid of it, people avoid getting into compliances. So, is it true? Like I have seen that for this reason they avoid compliances procedures.
I'll tell you 2 statements for this. A stitch in time will save you 9.
Yeah,
and
that's
second,
true.
ignorance of law is never an
Not
excuse.
an excuse. Yeah.
If you are trying to ignore out that law, okay, yaar, mere ko, that it will take me time. So just let me surpass it and then go ahead and do that thing. That is not going to help you out. Once you are caught badly. What will
that's
happen?
true.
What will happen? Say for example, certification takes 2 days.
Yeah.
Okay. If you do not do that certification and if you are caught later on, what is the amount of penalty that you pay? Far more than the 2 days. Otherwise, you would have delayed.
Yeah, true.
So, if you are okay with paying up those costs, then I seriously doubt anybody's mindset as an entrepreneur over here.
Yeah,
Because
true.
in the long run, you cannot see short-term goals, or alternatively, short-term goals cannot be ignored altogether just because I want to grow up big. See, it takes one step at a time for you to reach somewhere. If I have to go from here to my home, I will first have to walk out from here.
Yeah, true.
This is how exactly your compliances part also work. Some of them are very quick, some of them takes their own time. Understand, it takes time because at all stages there are verifications involved.
Yeah, true.
So if there is a single lacuna of verification taking place, what will happen? You leave out a space wherein the government officials will have a power that they can put you behind bars.
True.
I say this from GST perspective, I say this from income tax perspective, I say it from any other law that is applicable to you perspective. So for example, if you are into an industry that causes a lot of air pollution, and if you don't apply that pollution controlling unit, what will happen? You are behind the bars.
Behind the bars.
It takes a certificate that yes, all your machineries are correctly working. They are all working fine. If you don't take it, what will happen? You are again behind the bars.
Behind the bars.
Some are, manageable. You get away by paying late fees, penalties, or whatsoever interest.
Yeah.
A lot of them can also result into your shutdown. So as a startup, if you are trying to make your business work, you will face a situation wherein you are forced to shut down because of your own ignorance. That is the reason there is always a statement that I always get from a lot of company secretaries, not chartered accountants, that if you feel compliance is expensive, try non-compliance.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
you will technically understand what you lose by not doing something.
True.
So, for example, there is because the previous speakers also talked about, say, private limited, LLP. So there are always, say, KYC requirements that are to be done every year. So try not doing it once, you will understand the amount of fine that you pay.
Yeah.
So then,
Just for banking, they charge so much. Just for banking KYC, if not done, they are charging so much. Then for business, they might be charging a lot.
They might be charging an XYZ or an exorbitant amount.
Yeah, sure.
That being said, I always suggest, and as I said in the start of my speech as well, get your basics right. There are only two basics to a business. One is your technical aspect and one is your accounting aspect. Technical aspects involves making one product a super duper hit and then building upon it. Accounting aspects, get an accountant in your office on day one.
True.
That is what I always suggest. And if you are like, nahi sir, we do not have work to, keep that accountant accommodated for the entire week or for the entire month, you can always outsource it. But never let your things go unrecorded, because as an owner, you have the right to do expenses. As a human, you do not have the memory to remember everything. If you sit and complete everything at the end of the year, there is a very good chance that you do not remember why this amount was spent. And then that is again left to the best judgment of the person accounting what would have happened. So when it can stay real, let us not make it imaginary. And when there is an imagination involved in form of innovation, let us try to make it real.
Real.
That is what I always suggest. And thank you so much for the invitation once again. And I hope I was able to convey the message that I was trying to. And the theme and my message was properly in sync with each other.
Yeah. Okay, so I would like to thank CN Halchan Jain for his amazing speech. And now students and the degree holders, if you have any questions, you can ask them openly, so that we have an interactive session.
Any queries of any kind, kindly unmute yourself, or else you can even type your questions simply in the chat.
Can anyone Can anyone elucidate about LLP? That is a new thing that is coming up, and if sole proprietorship is there, or that's self-financing business, could there be any compliances? You could just elucidate on that.
What is the query exactly?
First of all, I'd like to know more about LLP, if you can tell.
I'll give you a brief about LLP.
Yeah.
LLP is something that, say for example, you and me want to do a common business together, but there is a say element of doubt or anything that we are say safest persons. We do not want any amount, say an unlimited amount that we may be forced to pay in future because of no fault of ours. So what we do to safeguard ourselves, we form into a partnership firm which limits our liability. That is what an LLP is on a holistic level. Going forward, doing business in a proprietorship model is never advised, because if you do business, it is perceived that it would be for a long-term period and not just in your lifetime. Say for example, any business has a purpose. That is what I believe. So if there is a purpose involved, it is not just in your lifetime that that purpose has to be solved. It also has to be solved after you are not there in this world. Therefore, it is always suggested that you create a separate legal entity for that. That separate legal entity can be created either in the form of a private limited, say in the form of a body corporate, or in form of a partnership firm. So that is the reason that even if you are a proprietorship firm, that self-financing and all is good if you have your own money. But I am sure nobody in this world has an unlimited amount of money.
True.
So when we don't have it, we'll obviously have to look from somebody outside. And nobody will give money to me as a person. But if it is, say, a private limited company or an LLP company, then for sure the amount or the possibility of me receiving money increases.
Thank you so much.
If anybody of the learned speakers also want to add anything.
Yeah, Mr. Chief, would you like to add something to the answer? Elaboration on LLP.
Yeah,
Only one thing I want to add here is just as Madam questions about LLP. LLP just I may say the glorified form of partnership firm. In partnership, once you may incorporate a partnership firm, just making a partnership deed, and you may enter into a partnership. But as Government of India brought into between a private limited company and simple partnership firm, a LLP. LLP is a limited liability partnership, and for a startup also, you may not enter into and get recognition as startup in the form of proprietorship firm. You must incorporate either private limited company, partnership firm, or LLP. LLP just a firm, partnership firm which is registered with ROC, Registrar of Company. That is LLP.
So basically, it safeguards you from the unlimited liability. Basically,
Yes.
limiting your liability to just in case of any exigency or some problem.
Yes.
yeah, ma'am, correct.
So much.
Yeah, Mr. Suzuki. Actually, I would like to know if mediation is possible in cases of breach of financial compliances.
Pardon? Can you come again? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is mediation possible as a form of ADR in cases of breach of financial compliances?
Why not? Why not? Whatever. Basically, that is it. Because mediation seeks to make sure that you have your relationships preserved. Because if there's a breach of financial compliance, invariably means it gives room for litigation. So with mediation being a leeway, because for instance, if once you have a breach of contract, the next thing that comes to your mind is to pursue the matter in courts. In other words, to pursue it via litigation. But mediation, because these are businesses that you have to do years and years. For instance, you can imagine if you've been doing business with your fellow Indian or a fellow Nigerian for over 40 years, will you let go? And because, okay, I'll give you an instance. I'll give you a nearer instance. For instance, you have a house. You're a landlord in a house. And you've had a tenant that has been with you for over 20 years. He has been paying his rent as and when due. But COVID came, by the way, in 2020, and that tenant could no longer meet up that obligation. there's already a breach of contract because there's a breach of compliance because he couldn't meet up that obligation. So the next thing for you to do, because you want your investment to yield returns to you, is to pursue the matter in court. But you have forgotten that that man has been paying that money as and when due for the past 20 years. So mediation will now quickly come in to preserve that relationship, because that man is not a recalcitrant person. It's just by happenstance. Because COVID was in place, that's why he could not pay that money. It was something beyond his ability, so beyond his comprehension. So I beg your pardon. So mediation comes in to make sure that that relationship is preserved. Because what mediation looks at is not what happened before. It looks at the future. It doesn't look at what happened before. It looks at what is ahead of you. How to make sure that that relationship is not smeared up in any manner, that relationship is kept intact. And you can bet me that if you have a relationship that has defeated that purpose of litigation, plus or minus, it goes a long way to be a sustainable one. Because once you go into the room, once you go to the courts, if you go to the courts, as long as you're coming out from the court premises, that relationship, it will no longer be as intact as it was prior to the litigation. So, of course, mediation has room for a breach of financial compliance, particularly for startups who do not have the money to go all the way in pursuing matters in litigation. Mediation will be very encouraged amongst startup businesses, because they don't have all the money. Even if they don't have so much to pay lawyers and everything. So mediation will be a leeway for them to see how they can manage and wade through whatever financial challenge or breach of contract that took place or has taken place before them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sir, I'm
You're
going
welcome.
far from the topic, but if due to financial crisis, someone is going for mediation and mediation does not give them the wanted results, can they opt for litigation?
Why not? They can. And you have to remember. You have to bear this in mind that, like I tell people anywhere I have the opportunity to speak, mediation is extreme negotiation. Is going to furthest negotiation procedures available. Once two parties do not agree, the mediation cannot take place. But if the two of them agree, mediation can take place. So there are some matters that, yes, eventually cannot be mediated upon. Because number one, remember, like I just chipped in, is a voluntary process. So if you and I have an issue and you refuse to mediate, I can't force you. But we also have to take into consideration that it can be court ordered. As lawyers, we know that mediation can be ordered by the courts. In most legislations across the border, across the countries, across nations, they're encouraging mediation in the first process, in the first instance. In other words, you have pre-trial. A pre-trial is a part of mediation. Because at that pre-trial, you're saying, can I continue? Do you want to look at this matter from another angle? So mediation is very key. But like I said earlier, if the two parties do not agree, or if one party does not agree, the mediation cannot take place.
Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome there.
Yeah, Nihal, I just had one question, since you are an expert on GST. So if like firms, that is corporate private limited companies especially, do not hire an accountant within 30 days of the incorporation, I have come across some points that mention that they would be definitely shut up before they could even start. So if you could just explain that.
At the point of they getting shut up before they start.
Exactly. If they don't appoint in government audit.
I'll give you a very simple example. Okay? Say for example, I am into an e-commerce business. Okay, we all understand e-commerce business, only then that makes sense, otherwise it makes no sense.
Definitely, everyone.
Yeah, so we all understand e-commerce business, right?
Yeah.
What happens is that there is somebody who is making a buyer and a seller meet, and that somebody charges commission out of it. That is it. A simple commission business is an e-commerce business. Now, that person who is selling to that e-commerce operator, okay, say for example, Nihal is selling to that operator. Nihal feels, what do I have to do? I'll have to register myself. Then his person will come to pick up the parcel. I'll have to only give that parcel to him. My work is over. No, it is not over. Because you'll have to understand that, say this piece of calculator, okay, say it has costed me 100 rupees today. 3 months, 6 months down the line, it will cost me 120. But there is no necessity that, that 100 rupees stock is only getting finished. There can be a very good chance that 120 rupees stock is going out. You are in an imaginary world that no, it is only 100 that is going out, and you do not change your costing accordingly. What will happen? All the profits that you have earned, gone. The amount of tax that you receive, the government took. What did you earn out of it? I believe absolutely nothing. Now, how could you avoid that situation? By hiring an accountant. I don't say hire a chartered accountant. I have never advised my clients to hire a chartered accountant. I only say them, hire a person who can maintain your books. If you do not wish to, outsource it to a firm. But don't stay in a situation wherein there is nobody to record things for you. I'll give you another example of it. Say you are a promoter and you run only say 2 to 3 crores turnover business. You want to know what is the amount payable to XYZ. What will you do? You will otherwise have to check and then count all his invoices that are there. Is your time worth that checking? I believe you. To it can be give a call to your accountant. What is the amount payable? He can take an hour. That is fine. Let him do whatever the hell that he wants to. But at least you can spend that hour in convincing new clients or going to the market and pitching for yourself. One person cannot do everything. And accounting, I say, is an ocean. Once you deep dive into it, you will remember there is no coming back, there is no coming out. And I say this for a entity having turnover of 4 to 5 crores. Forget about 1,000 crores, 2,000 crores. They are very well equipped with it. But when we talk about startup, we don't talk about a 1,000 crore company. I believe I am able to clear my point.
Definitely. That was actually a brief understanding of it and a detailed description. Yeah. Anuj, am I audible? Yeah. Anuj? Okay. Actually, I had a question for Anuj, but however, yeah, Mr. Paliwal, since Mr. Anuj has just put out the point that sometimes companies do not comply or hire a legal advisor as a CA, a CS, or an advocate because basically they want to save the expenses on compliance. So, just a small question on that. Like, what would be approximate charges that would come on incorporation, registration, and overall for the company?
I think your question is very tough because once you question about charges on just on this virtual platform, so I think it is.
Well, you are setting a platform. Let me remind you one thing.
Because
if I get any higher amount than what you are saying around, I will pass everything to you and then keep the differential amount for myself.
Yes. So actually, it may vary from city to city also, and we may say that if in case of private limited company, just we forgot the professional fees. In case of private limited, it depends on authorized capital also. The challan of ROC depends on a slab rate, which totally depends on what authorized capital you may need to start a private limited company, and also up in case of LLP. As Nehal sir also and CS Anuj also said that LLP may be a little bit cheaper than private limited because the compliance cost also and also incorporation cost is less as compared to private lending. But every coin has two parts. No? So, for answer of this, I think I may say only this. Otherwise, a range we may discuss around starting from 12,000, and it may go as high as capital or depends on city also.
I think you want to say market forces.
Yes.
What he actually means to say is that there can be reference, there can be reference of reference, there can be reference of reference of reference of reference as well.
So it was just key to know that what are the approximate charges that this founders and entrepreneurs do, like try to avoid it.
So just I told that minimum 12,000. You may think that you may start an entity.
Definitely, that's I think
this is incorporation cost. After that, what you are thinking about, how much capital you involve in that, that depends on you and any investor.
Okay. I think I touched a bit sensitive question over here. No issues. So yeah, audience, any questions for our guests? Riddhi, do you have any questions?
No, not now.
Okay. So yeah, Seema, Gaurav, Shaheen, Chaitali. No questions, Chaitali? Okay.
It was a wonderful session. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you, Ji. Thank
it
you.
was an interactive session.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
Sonia,
you, sir.
how are
Thank
you?
you.
Shidi, okay. Nice to see you.
How are you? Same here.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
So thank you all of you for coming on this platform and making it a wonderful journey of all the professional people, and thank you so much. And Shravan, now you can carry on.
Yeah. I would like to thank all the audience and our honorable guests for today for imparting such a valuable and definitely a very informative session on financial compliances for the startups. Now, I would like to also request the audience as well as the guests to join us tomorrow again at the very same time for the third and last day of. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.